I always thought betrayal was something that happened to other people. Not me. But the day I found out my wife was having an affair with a coworker named Bob, something inside me snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even confront her. Instead, I quietly planned a revenge so thorough, so devastating, that by the time the dust settled, he lost his job, his home, his family, and eventually, his entire life as he knew it. And the best part? He never even saw me coming. If you enjoy stories where betrayal meets cold, calculated justice, make sure you like this video and subscribe. This is a slow burn. It is emotional. It is painful. And the revenge hits with precision. Let's begin. I used to believe trust was a solid thing. Something you could lean on without fear of falling. I believed in my marriage. I believed in my wife. I believed in the life we had built together. That belief was the last thing holding me upright the night I walked into our bedroom and saw her phone buzzing repeatedly on the nightstand. She was not home yet. The house was dim, quiet, and still. The only movement came from the soft glow of her phone screen lighting up again and again, like a warning signal I had been avoiding for months. I am not someone who checks phones. That always felt like crossing a line. But the name flashing on the screen made the air in my chest turn sharp. Bob. Then the word work in parentheses. At first glance, I told myself it was harmless. A coworker. Maybe a question about a project. But then the messages kept coming. One after another. Urgent. Short. A rhythm that felt far too familiar to be professional. The message that broke me said, "Same place as last time. Cannot wait." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. My mind spun in slow motion while my heart pounded like a drum trying to escape my chest. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the screen until the glow faded and the room returned to darkness. She walked in 20 minutes later humming softly, smiling like her world was simple and pure. She kissed me on the cheek, then headed straight to the shower. The moment the bathroom door closed, something cold settled inside me. A realization that the woman I loved had become someone I no longer recognized. But I knew better than to confront her without proof. People who lie will twist reality until you doubt your own mind. And I refused to allow that. So the next morning, with my hands shaking and my heart numb, I contacted a private investigator named Ron. I did not know what to expect when I met him. Maybe someone rough, maybe someone intimidating. Instead, Ron looked calm, neat, and focused. He listened quietly while I explained what I had seen, never interrupting or making assumptions. When I finished, he folded his notebook and said one simple sentence. "I will find the truth." The next few weeks were torture. Every time she left for work, my stomach twisted. Every time she came home late smelling slightly different, my heart cracked a little more. Nights became long stretches of staring at the ceiling, wondering when the person I loved had slipped away. Ron sent routine updates. Nothing unusual today. Normal work schedule. Straight home after shift. Those messages gave me brief hope, but hope feels like poison when the truth is hiding behind it. 3 weeks later, Ron called late at night. His voice was lower than usual. "We need to meet. It is important." That sentence echoed in my mind as I drove to his office, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. When I stepped inside, he handed me a folder without a word. Inside were photographs. My wife sitting across from Bob at a restaurant. Smiling. Holding his hand. Leaning in close. Another set showed them in a parking lot, their bodies touching. Then photographs of them entering a hotel together. Photographs of her leaving alone 2 hours later. Every image was a blade slicing deeper into my chest. Ron finally spoke. "She has been seeing him for a while. I am sorry." I felt like I was sinking underwater. The room felt smaller. My skin felt cold. I nodded, because I could not trust my voice to speak. I thanked him, even though thank you felt like an absurd response when your entire life has just shattered. I walked out of his office with the folder tucked under my arm. I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel while my heart broke quietly in the dark. That night, something changed inside me. The grief was still there, sharp and suffocating, but beneath it grew a clarity I had never felt before. I would not scream at her. I would not beg her to explain. I would not let her twist anything with excuses. I would get my life back with precision. For the next few days, I pretended nothing had changed. I made breakfast. Picked up the kids. Watched television beside her. Every second of acting felt like a knife scraping across my ribs, but it also felt empowering. She had no idea that the truth was already in my hands. Meanwhile, I met with a divorce attorney. I brought the folder from Ron. In our state, cheating did not matter legally in asset division, but I wanted everything documented. I wanted no room for false narratives. I wanted facts on paper. I also asked for extra copies of the evidence. But not for court. For her lover's wife. Ron had found out that Bob was married. His wife deserved the truth too. So I asked Ron to arrange a private meeting with her and give her every piece of evidence he had collected. The day everything collapsed began with a perfect sense of symmetry. My wife was served divorce papers at her workplace right as her shift began. Meanwhile, across town, Ron sat at a cafe with Bob's wife, showing her the photos, dates, and locations. Later, Ron told me she did not cry. She sat completely still, absorbing everything, her expression tightening like steel being forged in real time. She handled the truth with a level of strength I had not expected. That same day, she emptied their joint bank account, packed her children's things, and moved back to her parents' home. Her father, who owned the company Bob worked for, fired him immediately after seeing the evidence. And since her parents owned the house Bob lived in, he was also evicted. Within 24 hours, his entire world collapsed. Meanwhile, my wife came home trembling and furious. She held the divorce papers in her hands like they were burning her skin. "You blindsided me," she said through clenched teeth. I looked at her calmly. "You blindsided our marriage." I just responded. Her face twisted with shock, as if she could not believe I refused to take the blame she tried to shift onto me. She locked herself in the bedroom without another word. Inside, I felt tired. More tired than angry. More empty than vengeful. But also free. Quietly free. Little did I know, the chaos around Bob was only beginning. And the emotional fallout in my own home had barely started. The days following the serving of the divorce papers felt like drifting through a world made of glass. Every step felt sharp. Every sound felt hollow. My wife barely spoke to me. When she did, her voice trembled with a mixture of shock, anger, and fear. All of it came too late. She accused me of humiliating her. She said I should have spoken to her privately. She said she would have explained. As if explanations could rewrite nights in hotel rooms. As if conversations could erase secret messages. As if betrayal deserved a gentle landing. While my house simmered with quiet resentment, another home across town exploded into chaos. Ron told me pieces of it in short calls, relaying what he heard through his own channels. The rest came from public court records and the occasional rumor that floated through social media. Bob returned home after work expecting to be greeted by his wife and his children. Instead, he found a half-empty house. Drawers open. Clothes gone. Children's toys missing. The place felt abandoned. His wife had cut the lights before leaving, so when Bob stepped inside, he walked into darkness. He called her. No answer. He called again. Still no answer. By the time call number 12 hit voicemail, panic twisted into anger. When he finally drove to her parents' home demanding to see his family, he was met at the front door by her older brother. According to statements later filed, the argument escalated fast. Bob insisted she had no right to leave. He insisted she had overreacted. He insisted he still had a right to the home, to the money, to the marriage. Her brother told him the truth straight to his face. His wife had seen photos. She had read messages. She had learned everything. Bob shoved him. The brother responded with a punch so clean it broke Bob's nose instantly. He hit the ground with a sound neighbors heard through the walls. Someone called the police. By the end of the night, a restraining order was in motion. In one evening, the man who helped dismantle my family lost his job, lost his house, and lost access to his children. I should have felt triumphant, but what I felt was something colder. Something quieter. Justice does not always roar. Sometimes it waits patiently and then falls like a hammer. Back home, I was not celebrating. I was trying to survive. The kids sensed the tension even though I tried to hide it. My daughter asked if everything was okay. My son asked why mom was sad. I answered as gently as I could without revealing the truth that would shatter their innocence. Sometimes grown-ups have problems, I told them. But none of it is your fault. We love you both. That will never change. Their small nods and trusting eyes hurt more than anything else. Nights became the hardest part of each day. I would sit in the quiet living room after the kids were asleep, feeling the weight in my chest like a stone pressing down from the inside. The memories of our marriage replayed in my head, twisting into questions with no answers. When did she stop loving me? Where did I go wrong? How long had she been lying? Why was I not enough? Those moments were dark. Every thought tried to pull me under. But then I would remember the photographs, the texts, the nights she claimed to be working late. I would remember how easily she walked into the house and kissed me after seeing someone else. He showed up at his ex-wife's workplace screaming for her to fix the marriage. When a coworker tried to intervene, Bob shoved him. That shove earned him another charge. Another court date. Another layer of legal complications. Ron called me one evening and said, "This man is unraveling. I have seen infidelity cases before, but I have never seen someone spiral this fast." It was not surprising. Some people are not built to face consequences. They crumble when the mirror finally reflects who they truly are. I checked the public database myself one quiet afternoon and saw with my own eyes how deep his downfall had gone. Charges. Violations. Court orders. A man completely out of control. Yet none of it brought me happiness. Justice had been served, but justice is not joy. What I felt instead was closure. A calm, steady sense of finality. My focus shifted back to my children and my own life. I tried new things. I cooked meals I had always wanted to try. I listened to music at night instead of sitting in silence. I fixed parts of the house that had been neglected. Every small accomplishment felt like reclaiming another piece of myself. Friends and family checked in on me, offering support. At first, I shrugged them off. I did not want to talk about the pain. But slowly, I let them in. Healing does not always come from grand gestures. Sometimes it comes from a simple conversation where someone says, "You did not deserve what happened to you." Months passed. The kids grew more accustomed to the new routine. Their laughter returned to the house. Their energy filled the rooms again. Seeing them smile felt like breathing clean air after being underwater for too long. My relationship with my ex-wife settled into something stable but distant. She apologized often. Sometimes too often. She wanted to explain her feelings, her loneliness, her reasons. I listened politely, but I never offered her the emotional comfort she sought. My heart had moved on. I realized something important. Betrayal does not define you unless you allow it to. You can break or you can rebuild. You can stay stuck in what someone did to you, or you can choose to step into a new life. One evening, I received a message from Ron. He had run into Bob's ex-wife. She had approached him and thanked him for what he had done. Then she asked him to pass something on to me. Tell him he helped save my life. Tell him I hope he is healing. Her words settled in my chest like a warm, steady flame. Someone I had never met felt gratitude toward me for giving her the truth she deserved. That meant something. That meant everything. Bob's ex-wife rebuilt her life. She joined her father's company and eventually took over after he retired. Her kids looked happy in the occasional photo she posted online. Bob, on the other hand, had disappeared completely. No social media. No new records for a long time. No job listings. It was as if he had erased himself. I thought that was the end of everything. The final chapter. The quiet conclusion. But life has a way of delivering one last ripple. A ripple that would mark the definitive end of our entire story. Healing does not arrive like a sudden sunrise. It arrives like a slow, drifting light that you barely notice at first. It sneaks in quietly, settling into small corners of your life until one day you realize the darkness is no longer overwhelming. Months had passed since the divorce was finalized. The house had grown quieter in a good way. Not silent. Just calm. Peaceful. The kind of quiet that feels earned. I had stopped waiting for footsteps that carried lies. I had stopped wondering when things would collapse. Life now had a steady rhythm instead of a trembling pulse. The kids were adjusting better than I expected. They moved between houses without fear. They talked freely. They laughed freely. They asked fewer questions. Children are resilient in a way adults often forget. They feel deeply, but they also recover with a bravery that humbles you. One Saturday morning, I woke up before the sun rose and realized something surprising. My chest did not feel heavy. The familiar ache that once lived under my ribs had faded. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the faint outline of the window. For the first time in so long, it felt like my body was not fighting itself. That small moment gave me the courage to keep moving forward. I found new hobbies. I started exercising again. I cooked new meals and experimented with recipes the kids found either amazing or questionable. I fixed the leaky faucet. Replaced broken shelves. Repainted the hallway. Each task reminded me I still had control over my life, even if the past had tried to tear me apart. But healing is not a straight path. Some nights, I still sat alone in the dark thinking about the years I spent giving everything to someone who did not value it. I remembered the laughter that once filled the house. The small gestures. The promises. The trust. Those memories were heavy. They made my chest ache if I let them sit too long. But I also remembered the lies. The secrecy. The messages from Bob. The hotel. The betrayal. Those memories pulled me back to reality. They reminded me why walking away was the only path left. My ex-wife tried to revisit the past sometimes. She wanted to explain her emotions, as if understanding her loneliness would erase the choices she made. She asked me questions hoping to soften the damage she caused. Do you think we were just going through a rough patch? Do you think we could have tried harder? Do you believe people can make mistakes and still deserve forgiveness? I answered as kindly as possible, but with firm honesty. We cannot rewrite what happened. We cannot rebuild something that shattered this way. We can only parent our children and move forward. She listened, sometimes with tears, but I did not bend. I had nothing left to give her. That chapter was closed. Meanwhile, the fallout of Bob's life had not settled. What I thought was the end was only the middle of his collapse. Even after months of silence, public court records continued to be updated. New entries appeared like distant echoes of chaos. Violations. Missed hearings. Fines. Warnings. Warrants. He was spiraling without control. Running from consequences instead of facing them. One evening, my phone buzzed with an unexpected call from Ron. His voice had a tone I had not heard before. A mixture of concern and curiosity. "I ran into someone today," he said. "Who?" "Bob's ex-wife." That made me sit up straighter. Ron continued. "She saw me during lunch. Recognized me. She walked over and thanked me. Not for the revenge. Not for exposing him. But for saving her from a life she said was draining her." I listened quietly, unsure what to say. "She wanted me to give you a message," Ron added. She said, "Tell him he helped me find freedom. Tell him I hope he is healing." The words settled in my chest like a warmth I had not felt in a long time. Someone I had never met believed I deserved peace. Someone else who had been betrayed understood the depth of the hurt and still wished me well. Ron paused before continuing. "She also said Bob is gone. He left the state again. No stable job. No contact with the kids. No home. Nothing. She thinks he is running from his own life." I thanked Ron for telling me. When I hung up, I sat on the couch feeling a strange mix of emotions. There was no satisfaction in learning someone had lost everything. There was no joy in knowing a man had destroyed himself. But there was closure. That night, I took a long walk around the neighborhood. The stars were faint but visible. Scattered across the sky like tiny reminders that life still held beauty. As I walked, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal. The divorce. The fallout. The quiet rebuilding. I realized I had become stronger than I ever imagined. Betrayal had not broken me. It had revealed the parts of me that were meant to grow. Eventually, I began attending a support group for people who had gone through infidelity and divorce. The first meeting felt strange and uncomfortable. I sat in a circle of strangers sharing their own versions of heartbreak. Some stories were worse than mine. Some were eerily similar. When I finally spoke, my voice trembled, but the words felt freeing. I told them what happened. I told them how I discovered the truth. I told them how my ex-wife reacted and how her affair partner's life fell apart. I told them about the pain. The nights of silence. The moments where I wondered if I was worth loving at all. And for the first time, I did not feel alone. After the meeting, a man approached me. He said my story helped him feel less ashamed of his own. He said he admired how calmly I handled everything. I thanked him, and as I walked out, I felt lighter. Weeks turned into months. Healing had become a part of my daily life. Not a dramatic journey, but a quiet and steady transformation. I felt more grounded. More patient. More aware of who I was without the weight of betrayal pressing against my chest. The house felt lighter. My thoughts felt clearer. My days felt meaningful again. But life has a way of testing you even when you think you are finally at peace. Sometimes it sends a reminder, not to drag you backward, but to show you just how far you have climbed out of the darkness. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon that felt as ordinary as breathing. I had taken off work early to clean out the garage. There were old boxes scattered across the concrete floor, filled with memories I had avoided sorting through. Children's drawings. Broken toys. Holiday decorations. A few old photographs from the years before everything fell apart. When I opened a box filled with family pictures, I paused. There were images of vacations. Birthdays. Moments where my ex-wife and I looked happy, connected, whole. I stared at them for a long time, letting myself feel the strange ache of nostalgia mixed with truth. Those moments had been real at the time. Even if everything later crumbled, those memories were pieces of a life that once felt solid. I kept the pictures that mattered for the kids and placed the rest into a box labeled past. It felt like the most honest name for them. My phone vibrated on the workbench. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something nudged me to answer. "Hello," I said. A woman responded. Her voice was calm but carried a slight tremor. "Is this the husband of Melissa?" she asked. My chest tightened. "Yes." "Who is this?" She introduced herself as a clerk from the county courthouse. Immediately, my mind began listing every possible scenario. Was there a custody issue? A legal update? A problem with paperwork? She continued. "We are contacting you because a man named Robert is attempting to file claims related to past restraining orders and personal property. You are listed as an involved party in the initial reports." I froze. Bob. The ghost of the past. The storm I thought had long since passed. The man who had destroyed his own life through choices he made willingly. "Why would he file anything against me?" I asked. The clerk replied. "He alleges that he was wrongfully targeted and that evidence was falsified. He claims you and his ex-wife conspired against him." I let out a slow breath, a mix of disbelief and disappointment. "Ma'am," I said carefully. "The evidence came from a licensed investigator. The photographs and dates were all real. I never falsified anything. I barely had any interaction with the man." She responded. "We understand. We needed to notify you for protocol. Based on what we have, his filings lack credibility. They will likely be dismissed." I thanked her and hung up. The moment the call ended, a chilling silence filled the garage. Not fear. Not anxiety. Just a moment of reflection. Bob was still searching for someone to blame. Still refusing to look inward. Still running from the truth he created with his own actions. That realization told me everything I needed to know. He had not learned anything. He had not changed. He had not grown. He was simply continuing the same cycle of destruction he had lived in for years. Later that evening, I sat at my laptop and checked the public court database again. Sure enough, his new filings were listed there. They were messy. Disorganized. Filled with accusations that were clearly rooted in desperation rather than reality. But then I noticed something far more telling. A recent note indicated a psychological evaluation had been ordered in another state. Another document mentioned pending warrants. Those reminders pushed away the self-blame and reminded me that betrayal says nothing about the worth of the betrayed. It only exposes the weakness of the betrayer. My wife tried talking to me again one evening. She approached me in the kitchen while I was doing dishes. Her voice cracked as she asked if the marriage could be saved, if we could work on things, if we could start fresh. She said the affair was a mistake. She said it did not mean anything. She said she wanted her family back. I asked her one simple question. If I had done what you did, with the same messages and the same hotel, would you forgive me? Her silence was the clearest answer she had given me in months. No, she whispered finally. Then why, I asked calmly, do you expect me to be better to you than you were to me? She cried. I felt nothing. Not anger. Not hatred. Not satisfaction. Just emptiness. My final emotional tie to her had snapped clean. Our communication shifted after that. It became practical. Focused on the children. Short messages. Direct information. No intimacy. No shared thoughts. No lingering warmth. The emotional bridge between us had burned down to ashes. Meanwhile, Bob continued to fall apart with remarkable speed. In the months that followed, multiple incidents were publicly recorded. Life kept moving. I kept healing. One evening, I attended a work function. It was the first social event I had gone to in a long time. I expected to feel out of place, but something surprising happened. I ended up sitting next to an old acquaintance named Claire. We had known each other through mutual friends but never talked much before. She asked how I had been. I gave an honest but simple answer. It has been a rough year, but I am finding my way again. Claire nodded with understanding. Sometimes life breaks before it gets better, she said. We talked for a long time. Longer than I expected. There was no flirtation. No hidden agenda. Just two people having a real conversation. It felt natural. Easy. Peaceful. When the event ended, she said, "You seem like someone who is finally stepping out of a dark chapter. That is something to be proud of." Her words stayed with me for days. They made me realize how far I had come. Healing was no longer something I was chasing. It was something I had earned. But just when life felt steady, a final ripple from the past reached me. Another referenced substance abuse concerns. Bob had not simply left his old life behind. He had fallen deeper into instability. The truth was simple. His downfall had not been a one-time event. It had become a way of life. I closed the browser slowly. I had expected revenge to end with the collapse of his world, but the real revenge came quietly. It came in the form of a man running endlessly from the consequences of his own actions. A man who once stood confidently beside my wife, believing he had something worth betraying a family for, now reduced to a trail of legal failures and personal chaos. The next morning, I called the courthouse back to confirm whether I needed to prepare anything. The clerk reassured me that Bob's claims were baseless. He had filed without proper evidence. Without legal standing. Without stability. They expected everything to be dismissed within weeks. I thanked her again and ended the call. That was the moment I realized something important. His story no longer had any power over me. It no longer had a place in my life. The final ripple had reached me, but it did not shake me. It barely made a sound. I stepped outside onto the porch later that day. The air was cool. A soft breeze brushed across my face. The world felt calm. My kids were inside, laughing over a board game. The house was filled with warmth that felt real again. That evening, we cooked dinner together. My son chopped vegetables with the pride of a young chef. My daughter stirred a pot of pasta, humming happily. Watching them felt like a reminder of everything I still had. Everything worth protecting. Everything worth rebuilding. After dinner, they showed me a school project they wanted help with. I sat with them at the kitchen table, guiding them through their ideas. Listening to their jokes. Watching them scribble drawings on scraps of paper. For a moment, I stepped outside myself and saw the scene for what it was. A father and his children creating something together. A home filled with comfort, not lies. A life built honestly, not on the fragile foundation of someone else's deceit. Later that night, after the kids went to sleep, I sat outside with a warm drink, looking up at the stars. They shimmered across the sky like tiny reminders that even darkness holds beauty when you look carefully enough. My thoughts drifted back to the past. Not in a painful way. More like someone revisiting an old chapter of a book they have already finished. I reflected on everything I had survived. I reflected on how close I had come to losing myself in the chaos. And I reflected on the truth that had ultimately set two families free. I did not hate my ex-wife. I no longer felt anger toward her. What she did changed the course of my life, but it did not destroy it. If anything, it pushed me toward a version of myself that was stronger, clearer, more resilient. I did not hate Bob either. I did not even think about him much anymore. His destruction was not mine to orchestrate. It had always been the natural consequence of his actions. Some people dig their own graves and blame the world for the fall. A few weeks later, I received an official letter from the courthouse confirming that Bob's filings had been dismissed completely. He had failed to appear. His claims held no merit. His case was closed. I folded the letter and placed it in the same box labeled past. I closed the lid. And that was that. Life continued moving forward. I continued rebuilding. My children flourished. My home became a safe place again. I made new friends. I found new joys. I rediscovered the version of myself I had lost in the years of trying to keep a marriage alive that had already died quietly. Every step forward felt like reclaiming something I once thought I would never get back. My peace. The story had begun with betrayal, shattered illusions, and a devastating truth. But it ended with strength, peace, and a complete release from the past. The stars above me shimmered gently as I took a deep breath. The past no longer knocked on my door. And even if it did, I would not open it again. Looking back now, I can see the story clearly from beginning to end. Like watching a storm crawl across the sky and finally drift away. There was a time when the betrayal felt like a weight that would crush me. I thought I would never breathe normally again. Never sleep peacefully again. Never trust myself again. But healing has a way of proving you wrong in the quietest moments. The truth is that the world does not fall apart in a single day. And it does not rebuild itself in a single day either. It happens piece by piece. Breath by breath. Small victories. Hard nights. Moments where you question everything. Followed by moments where you finally understand why everything had to change. I learned something powerful. The person who breaks you is rarely the person who helps you heal. Healing comes from you. From your strength. From your choices. From the decision to move forward even when your heart is still shaking. My ex-wife became a part of my history, not my future. I did not hate her. I simply no longer carried her weight. I gave her the same boundaries I would give to any stranger who once mattered but no longer had a place in my story. She became a figure I interacted with only for the sake of the children we both love. As for Bob, he faded into the background of life like a faint echo. His downfall was his own creation. The truth simply revealed what was already unstable beneath the surface. Some people collapse under the truth because they never had the character to stand on it. In the end, I did not need revenge to feel whole again. Revenge had already taken care of itself. Justice had unfolded on its own. What truly healed me was reclaiming my peace. Focusing on my children. Rebuilding my life with honesty. And rising from the wreckage stronger than I had ever been before. When I look at my reflection now, I no longer see the man who discovered messages on a glowing phone. I no longer see the man who spent nights drowning in questions without answers. I see a man who survived something heavy. And walked out the other side with his integrity intact. My story did not end with betrayal. It ended with peace. And peace was worth every step of the journey. Thank you for listening to this story of betrayal, justice, and rebuilding a life from the ground up. If you found the journey powerful or relatable, make sure you like the video, subscribe for more stories, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps bring more real and emotional stories to life. Until next time, take care of yourself and protect your peace.